Hello and welcome to our homestead. We're Crystal and Carl. We are child-free homesteaders and we love growing and preserving food. We're just coming out of our winter rest and getting ready for the busy season ahead. Here's a peek at our week behind the homestead. This week started out with a trip to the creepy old farmhouse cellar, which I like to call our larder. It's where our deep freezer is that holds most of our meat. I make a meal plan every week and I like to bring up everything we're gonna need for the whole week. We keep our frozen goods organized in these boxes, so it's really easy to find what we're looking for and stuff doesn't just disappear into the bottom of the freezer, never to be seen again. We also grabbed a bag of apples and a jar of crispy mushrooms from our extra fridge while we were down here. And here's what I got. Some New York strip steaks, those will be for grilling, a block of pepper jack cheese, that is for snacking and lunches, and then some summer sausage and liverwurst, that is also usually for lunches. And then we got some hamburger, some chicken, and a fillet of salmon. This is what I kept out for the immediate future, and the rest went into an easier to access freezer that I can pull from and thaw all week as I need it. And these mushrooms, by the way, are incredible. They're homegrown shiitakes that are baked crispy in olive oil, and they're nutty and buttery and just so amazing. The week started off cold and snowy, but Carl had Monday off, so he took advantage and did a lot of outdoor chores that needed to be done, mostly unpleasant things. He's removing burdock here. It grows all over the place, and it's a bit of a menace. It creates these really sticky Velcro-like burrs that get caught on everything, most obnoxiously on the dog, which it's a huge chore to pull them out of fur. So we try to keep them out of the yard. They always just creep back in. It was also time for a post-winter coop cleanout, so Carl kicked the chickens outside and got to work. This entails scooping out all of the old straw, which he carts into the woods and dumps it out. And once the snow melts, the chickens will scratch through this and spread it all over. It will compost in place and break down into some really lovely soil, which we'll then use for our raised beds and our gardens. It's pretty much like gold. This sweet gal right here is Whitey. She's 10 years old, which is like 100 in chicken years, and she's in this nest box laying an egg. Isn't that amazing? She does still lay eggs from time to time, and she's one of my favorite chickens. Chickens don't really love to be in snow. They will walk through it if it's shallow, but they prefer dry ground. Right now, they're just happy to be out and happy that spring is almost here, and me too. After Carl gets all the old poopy straw out of the coop, he spreads lime on the floor. We use one called First Saturday Lime, and it helps to keep things drier, and it also deters insects. And then on top of that, a new layer of fluffy, fresh straw. The chickens are coming in to inspect his work, of course. There's nothing they love more than a fresh pile of straw. And now that it's warming up and they'll be spending more time outside and less time inside, the coop will stay cleaner, and we won't have to clean it nearly as often, which is really nice. This week is the week of maple syrup. We're still collecting sap, and we'll be doing the annual huge maple boiling day this weekend. I'm always amazed at how much sap these trees produce. We're talking multiple gallons per day from one tree. We keep our sap stored in buckets on the north side of our house where it's cool and where the sun doesn't shine. And we actually have some older sap that we collected over the last 3 weeks that was frozen solid in the buckets, and we wanted it to stay that way because it lasts longer when it's frozen. So Carl buried it in snow, which is what you're looking at right here. There's like 60 gallons of sap under that snow pile. It turned into a beautiful week with lots of sun, and gosh, does the sun feel nice this time of year. We've been taking lots of family walks through the apple orchard, and I hadn't been out here since Carl gave everyone their yearly haircuts, so I got to see his handiwork. He always does such a great job, such a meticulous, lovely job pruning our apple trees. Towards the end of the week, what little snow we had was just about melted, and the sap was still running like a faucet. We're up to nearly 70 gallons of sap collected from just 2 trees. Isn't that wild? And if you're curious about small batch maple syrup making, I have a full video tutorial here on my channel. Speaking of, with boiling on the horizon, it was time to dismantle Sap Mountain and uncover the buckets. They are frozen solid under here, and we need them to thaw out before boiling day. And the only place we have to do that is in the house. Much to the dog's delight, his favorite pastime is drinking dirty, melted snow water off the top of the buckets. He cleaned every single one. We had some good meals this week. It got warm and sunny, and I was just craving all of the fresh things. I made one of my favorite cabbage vegetable slaw salads. It's basically a coleslaw dressing, but the vegetables are chunkier, and I use cabbage, carrot, cucumber, and a little bit of red onion. It's really good. To go with that, we had grilled steak, because when it's 50 degrees out in February in Wisconsin, we grill a lot. We also had homegrown baked potatoes topped with shredded cheese and what is the equivalent of homemade tater topper. Another dinner this week was salmon rice bowls. They have rice, seasoned baked salmon, and a whole bunch of veggies and toppings. Cucumber, avocado, greens, quick pickled red onions, and then crispy onions, sesame seeds, and 2 sauces. Japanese barbecue sauce, which doesn't taste anything like American barbecue sauce, so don't worry. And then sriracha mixed with mayo. And the sauces are key. Both are an absolute must, and it has to be these exact ones. This is an all-time favorite meal of ours, and it's pretty much the only way I want to eat salmon now. It's even better in the summer when the fresh veggies come from our garden. This was a quick lunch I threw together. If you know me, you know I love a good snack plate, and this was leftover steak, crispy mushrooms, some fresh veg, citrus, and garlic cheddar zucchini bread from the freezer. These 2 homebodies ventured out this week for a date to the local dairy for a curd run. You know how you go for a curd run. These are made fresh every day. They're not even cold yet. They're still warm, and they're as squeaky as a cheese curd can be. So good, and a definite worthwhile reason to leave the homestead. Our plan for the weekend was, of course, maple syrup boiling. So on Friday night, Carl got everything set up. All of the boiling pans and the wood, and even the kindling and the newspaper, so that all he had to do Saturday morning was wake up and touch off the fire to get it going. He started the fire at 5 a.m. and had the first pans of sap going by 6. You would probably not be surprised to know that Carl is also the type of person who washes, dries, and puts his clothes away all in the same day. For Maple Syrup Day lunch, I brought out a picnic of hot dogs, plus veggies, citrus, apples, curds, of course, and lazy devils, as I like to call them, which are hard-boiled eggs with a swipe of mayo and mustard. Weenies were conveniently roasted over the open fire. And naturally, I had to share my lunch. It started off as just the one, but she must have told her friends, and then they all came over to join us. Carl kept a close eye on the fire and the maple syrup all day long. This is him moving the first batch of almost syrup off the fire so that 1, it doesn't accidentally burn, and 2, so that he can keep things moving. He tries to keep as much sap on the fire as possible because the more you can get on the fire and heating up and evaporating, the faster it goes and the faster you'll be done. We have a very backwoods kind of setup here, and it is a fair amount of work, so it always feels good when you get down to that last pan. And that'll be it for our maple season. The trees are starting to bud, and Carl pulled out all the taps today. He brought a couple big pots of almost syrup into the house, and I will be finishing these a little bit later. While Carl was out boiling most of the day, I worked in the house on a few different projects, including rendering some tallow. This is suet that I cut into chunks and then ground in the food processor to make the rendering quicker. I let this cook on low in the slow cooker for quite a while, and it's destined to fry some homemade potato chips, which I am wildly excited about. It's a little experiment I'm going to try. The week ended with maple making coming to a close. Carl doesn't quite finish it into maple syrup out on the fire since that can be a little bit tricky. So when it's almost done, he brings it inside and I take over. I filtered it and then let it boil in the house for a couple hours on the stove until it was perfect. It's always just a little bit nerve-wracking because at this point there is a lot of work in this pot right here and I don't want to screw it up. We ended up getting a little over 2.5 gallons of finished syrup from 70 gallons of sap from just 2 trees. And I'm very happy to say that all of the maple syrup is now safely in its jars and tucked away, and I have pancakes on the menu this coming week to celebrate.